I joined Special Branch in May 1990, and my first charge was with Enoch Powell, who by this time was out of politics and living back in London. The powers that be had decided that there was a real threat and he should be given protection, and it was given to him for about 9 months, when it was then decided that there was no longer a threat. In my lecture I go into more depth on the reason why he was initially given protection and why it was deemed that protection should be withdrawn after such a short period. I also look into the conspiracy theory put forward by Enoch Powell and others with regards to the death of Ari Neave. I worked with John Major from 1995 to 1997. One particular incident during that period that comes to mind was a visit that he had to Westminster Hospital. I went to the venue in advance to make sure everything was secure and okay for his arrival. Just as he arrived, a black cab pulled up some sort of 50 yards from his position, and an elderly couple got out, and the woman said to what I presume was her husband, "Look, did you see who that is?" So he said, "Yes, it's that John Major." So she said, "I wonder why he's here." And after a few seconds' pause, the husband turned round and said, "He's mostly come to close the place down." When John Major lost the 1997 general election, I stayed at number 10 to become part of Tony Blair's protection team. I talk about the journey that he made from Islington to Downing Street via Buckingham Palace, and his early weeks as a new Prime Minister and his first visit to Chequers. This was a different general election, as not only had the Prime Minister changed, but the political party had changed also. In 1996, a year before Tony Blair won the general election, he took his annual holiday to Tuscany and travelled down to Tuscany in the family Montego estate with his wife, children and his mother-in-law. The year's 1997. What a difference a year makes. The newly elected Prime Minister travels with his family to Tuscany in the Queen's jet, where he is met by the President of Tuscany with all the pomp and ceremony. I talk about this visit of his first holiday as Prime Minister and the trials and tribulations of dealing with the Italian police, especially with their conception of low profile. It became common practice that the Prime Minister and his 2 sons would always play five-a-side football with us, his security team, against the local Italian police team. And wherever we played, he always was rest assured that the local mayor would turn up to support, I suppose, his police team, but also to say hello and to introduce himself to Tony Blair. I was privileged enough to have 3 trips to Tuscany with Tony Blair and his family over the period of 3 years, and we always played five-a-side football, which was always enjoyed by both ourselves and the Italian police. Like Lady Thatcher before him, Tony Blair enjoyed going to Chequers. It gave him some peace and tranquility and some precious time with his family. He was also able to receive visitors away from the prying eyes of the press. One of these visitors was Princess Diana, who came with Prince William for Sunday lunch. This was only about 4 weeks before she was tragically killed in Paris. In my lecture, I talk about this visit and the political implications that surrounded it. Easter '98 shows Tony Blair's delayed arrival to Spain to meet the Spanish Prime Minister José Aznar. The delay was caused due to the lengthy talks in producing the Good Friday Agreement. So instead of arriving on the Wednesday, he eventually arrives in the early hours of Easter Saturday morning. Later that year, in November 1998, I'm with Tony Blair when he historically becomes the first British Prime Minister to address the Irish Parliament. And again, being a very busy year, 1998, I'm with him when he visits the RAF in Kuwait after the 1998 attack on Iraq by the combined air forces of the United States and the UK. In 1988, Salman Rushdie published his most controversial work, The Satanic Verses. This caused widespread condemnation from the Islamic world, and as a result of this, on the 14th of February 1989, Ayatollah Khomeini issued a fatwa requiring the execution of Salman Rushdie. He was then placed under police protection and lived in safe houses for many years. I lived with him from 1991 to 1995 at various locations. My lecture touches on the threat of living under the fatwa and our relationship with him, bearing in mind the close living conditions we had. I look at why the government did so much to protect him and as to what they were actually protecting. I tell the story of this cartoon and how it came about. Between 1991 and 1995, I actually shared my time between Salman Rushdie and Lady Thatcher. We only lived with Salman Rushdie for 2 weeks out of every 8, so for the other 6 weeks I was back on the Thatcher team. In my lecture I talk about the time served with Lady Thatcher, the great presence that she has, and some of the memorable things that we did. I was with Geoff Hoon, the Defence Secretary, from 2001 to 2003. Amongst other things, in my talk about this time, I talk about trips to Pristina and Kosovo, to New Delhi in India, and also look at the implications of a cabinet reshuffle and how it has an effect on the government minister. Of all the people I had the good fortune of protecting, I think one of my favourites is the Reverend Ian Paisley. His private side is completely different to his public image, and he was a very nice and kind person. I can recall on one visit to Alton Broad in Norfolk to go and visit his son. On the way there, it was coming up to lunchtime, and he asked me to find a place to go and have some lunch. There was this sign for this 5-star hotel, and he suggested that we go there, so we went into the hotel. We had a fine meal. Then after the meal we got back into the car, and then Ian Paisley said to me, "Graham, did you enjoy your meal?" So I said, "Yes, it was very, very nice indeed, thank you very much." He then told me, he said, "There is nothing in the Bible that says a man of God should not eat well." And I suppose he's quite right.